Most people would never believe a story like this unless they saw it with their own eyes. A 24-year-old tech billionaire, young, handsome, and with the world at his feet, suddenly and quietly marries a 63-year-old widow who works as a part-time waitress at a small-town diner. No red carpets, no celebrity buzz, no flashy wedding posts on social media. Just a quiet ceremony, a lot of raised eyebrows, and one huge question that nobody could answer: why? Her name is Carol. Most of the town knows her as the sweet older lady who always remembers your order and slips extra fries on your plate when you're having a rough day. She's been working the morning shift at Gracie's diner for over 20 years, ever since her husband passed away in a car accident. Life hasn't been kind to her, but she kept going, day by day, never asking for much, and always wearing that tired, kind smile. He's Daniel Mercer, tech prodigy, media darling, and the youngest person to land on the Forbes Billionaires list last year. He built an app that changed the way people communicate, and in less than 5 years, turned it into a multi-billion-dollar empire. He lives in a glass mansion in Silicon Valley, flies private, and once dated a supermodel. So what in the world would draw him to a woman nearly 40 years older, with grey hair, arthritis in her knees, and no social status to speak of? Some say it's a publicity stunt, others swear it's love, but the truth? It's far more shocking than anyone expected. It started when Daniel walked into Gracie's diner on a rainy Tuesday morning, alone, wearing a hoodie, and definitely not looking like someone worth billions. Carol served him black coffee and pancakes, just like she does for everyone else. But what Daniel found in that moment wasn't just breakfast. It was something much deeper, something he had been missing his entire life. As the weeks went by, he kept coming back, always to the same booth, always asking for Carol. And then just 6 months later, the announcement came: they were married. What could possibly connect a billionaire genius with a small-town widow who's lived a lifetime of pain and quiet resilience? The real reason behind their marriage has nothing to do with money, and everything to do with a secret Carol kept for over 40 years, one that Daniel was never supposed to find out. And when you hear what it is, everything you thought you knew about love, fate, and the choices we make will change forever. Daniel didn't know why he kept going back to that diner. At first, he told himself it was just the coffee, strong, hot, and strangely comforting. But deep down, he knew it wasn't about the coffee. It was about Carol. There was something about the way she spoke, the way she listened. She treated him like a regular person, not like the billionaire he was. She didn't ask about his company, his money, or his fame. She just talked to him about the weather, her garden, the old records she liked to play on Sundays. For someone who had spent most of his adult life surrounded by people who wanted something from him, Carol was different. He started to ask questions, carefully at first. How long had she lived in town? What did she do before the diner? Did she have kids? Carol always answered kindly, but never gave too much. She had a calm, guarded way about her, like someone who had learned not to expect too much from the world. She told him about her late husband, Richard, and how they were married for over 30 years before a drunk driver took him away. She didn't go into detail, but Daniel noticed how her voice softened every time she said Richard's name. One day, while she was pouring him coffee, Carol mentioned something strange. She said, "You remind me of someone I used to know a long time ago." Daniel laughed it off at the time, thinking it was just a passing comment. But she stared at him a second too long, and that sentence stuck with him for days. He couldn't shake the feeling, so he started digging, quietly, through private channels, the way someone with his power and resources could. He found old records, small-town newspaper clippings, and eventually a faded photo in a local archive. It showed a much younger Carol standing next to a man holding a baby. There was something familiar in the baby's face, something that made Daniel's heart stop. That's when the real questions began. Who was the baby? Why did Carol never mention having children? And why did that child, from a photo taken over 2 decades ago, look so much like Daniel himself? He didn't tell Carol what he found. Not yet. He needed answers. But something told him that once the truth came out, nothing would ever be the same. And what he was beginning to uncover wasn't just about family. It was about betrayal, lost time, and a choice someone made long ago that would change the course of both their lives forever. Daniel couldn't sleep. The more he stared at the photo, the more questions flooded his mind. He hired a discreet private investigator, someone he trusted completely, to dig deeper into Carol's past, quietly. Within a week, the reports came in. The baby in the photo was born in 2000. The birth certificate had no father listed. The mother's name, Carol Bennett. The place, a small clinic in upstate New York, the same town Carol once mentioned in passing, saying she left it behind for good. But the clinic had shut down years ago, and most of the records were lost or destroyed. What remained were bits and pieces, just enough to leave a trail, but not enough to give a clear answer. One name kept popping up, though: Dr. Eugene Halvorsen. He was the attending physician at the time of the birth. He'd retired long ago, but Daniel managed to find him, living quietly in a cabin outside Vermont. When Daniel visited him, the old man hesitated at first, clearly torn between loyalty and guilt. But then he said something that shook Daniel to the core. Sometimes, people give up what they love most to protect it. He didn't say more. He didn't have to. Daniel left with a storm brewing in his heart. What had Carol been protecting? And from who? Meanwhile, Carol noticed a change in Daniel. He still came by the diner, still smiled, still asked about her day. But something in his eyes had shifted. He looked at her longer, listened closer, like he was searching for something unspoken. Carol pretended not to notice, but she felt the weight of it. She knew it was only a matter of time. At night, Carol sat alone in her small living room, going through old letters she kept hidden in a wooden box behind her closet. She read them one by one, tears in her eyes, memories pressing in like ghosts. One letter stood out. It was never sent. It was meant for Daniel's mother. "You made your choice," the letter said, "but one day he'll want to know where he really came from. When that day comes, I only hope he'll forgive me." The truth was buried deep, more complicated than Daniel could have imagined. There was another woman involved, another promise broken, and a decision made years ago that Carol had carried like a secret scar ever since. But Daniel was getting closer. Every day he peeled back another layer. What he didn't know yet was that he wasn't the only one searching. Someone else had started asking questions too. And if they found the truth first, the cost wouldn't just be emotional, it could destroy everything. The days grew heavier. Daniel stopped visiting the diner. Carol noticed. She didn't ask why. Deep down, she knew the time she had been dreading was near. He had found something, too much maybe, and she could feel the space between them filling with unspoken truths. Every time the bell above the diner door jingled, she flinched, half expecting to see his face, half hoping he wouldn't show. But he didn't. Daniel had gone quiet for a reason. The latest report from the investigator confirmed what he feared. His birth records had been tampered with. His mother, the woman who raised him, wasn't his biological mother. His father, whose name was never mentioned in family stories, wasn't a mystery businessman abroad as he'd been told. There was no father. Only one name kept circling back: Carol Bennett. But how could she be his mother? She never said a word, never gave him even a hint, and yet everything pointed back to her. He flew back to the small town without telling anyone. He didn't go to the diner. Instead, he sat in his rental car outside Carol's modest home, staring at the porch light flickering in the evening breeze. His mind raced. If this was true, if she had given him up, then stayed silent all this time, why come back into his life now? And why marry him? That thought made his stomach turn. Could it really be that twisted? Or was there something even deeper he still didn't know? At the same time, another presence had arrived in town. A man in his late 50s, with sharp eyes and a quiet demeanor, checked into a local motel. He asked around about Carol. said he was an old friend, but the truth was darker. He wasn't just curious, he was angry. Someone from Carol's past who had once been involved in decisions that changed lives, and now he was back to stop whatever was coming. He wasn't sure what Daniel knew yet, but he wasn't taking chances. He'd stayed hidden for decades, and if the truth surfaced now, it could destroy legacies. Carol, sitting in her dim living room, holding that same unsent letter, felt the weight of it all pressing down. Her hands trembled. She knew that both Daniel and someone else were closing in. The lies she told to protect those she loved were unraveling fast. And what scared her most was that the truth might not set anyone free. It might only break what little was left to protect. Just before midnight, Daniel finally stepped out of his car and walked up to Carol's front porch. He stood there for a long time, staring at the door, hand hovering over the bell. Inside, Carol sat in silence, staring at the same door from the other side, sensing he was there. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the weight of everything she had never said. But just before he could knock, a voice called out from the shadows. "You don't want to do that, son." Daniel turned quickly. A man emerged from the darkness, calm but firm, his eyes steady. It was the same man who had been asking questions around town, the one from Carol's past. His name was Martin Shaw. Daniel didn't know him, but Carol did, and the moment she heard that voice, her face went pale. Martin wasn't just anyone. He was Richard's brother, Carol's brother-in-law, and for years he had buried secrets that even she didn't fully understand. After Richard's death, Martin had handled everything: arrangements, finances, even legal matters surrounding the child Carol had secretly given up before meeting Richard. She thought he had destroyed the records. She thought it was done. But Martin hadn't destroyed anything. Instead, he sold that information years ago. A quiet deal with a powerful family that didn't want a child's birth tied to their name. A family connected to Daniel's adoptive mother. That's why she could raise a baby with no questions asked. Money, reputation, and silence had done the rest. And now Martin was back, not to make peace, but to control the damage. Because if Daniel went through with exposing the truth, powerful names would fall, legal battles would follow. And Martin, he'd lose everything he built from secrets and silence. "You think she gave you up because she didn't love you?" Martin said, stepping closer. "She was forced to. She had no choice. But exposing this now won't bring back time. It'll only burn what's left." Daniel stood frozen, every part of him torn between anger and confusion. He wanted to believe Carol had protected him. But why did it take 24 years and a diner booth to find her again? Inside, Carol finally opened the door. She didn't see Daniel. She only saw Martin, and her past staring her down. "Leave him alone," she said softly. "He deserves to know the truth." But Martin didn't move, and Daniel didn't speak. In that moment, with 3 lies tangled in the darkness, one thing was clear. This wasn't just about love, or lies, or money anymore. It was about control, identity, and one final truth that none of them were ready to face. Daniel stepped between Martin and Carol, his voice steady but cold. "You've had your say. Now it's her turn." He looked at Carol, searching her face for answers, for something real. She nodded slowly, eyes glistening with years of held-back truth. "Come inside," she whispered. Martin tried to follow, but Daniel shut the door behind them without a word. Inside, the air was thick. Carol sat down on the worn couch, clutching the letter she had never sent. "You were mine," she said, her voice breaking. "You were my son." Daniel didn't speak, just stood there waiting. "I had you when I was very young, before I met Richard. Your father, he wasn't a good man. I tried to run, to protect you. But back then, people like Martin had power. He told me I couldn't raise you on my own. He arranged for your adoption, quietly, secretly. He said it was the only way to keep you safe." Daniel felt the floor shift beneath him. "So you knew where I was all along?" he asked, voice trembling. "I didn't," Carol said quickly. "Once you were gone, they cut me off. I didn't even know your name. I only found out a year ago, by chance. I saw you on the news, recognized your eyes. I knew. And when you walked into that diner, I swear I didn't plan it. I just wanted to know you. Daniel sat down across from her, his mind reeling. All the pain, the confusion, the years of not knowing where he came from, it suddenly made sense. But before he could speak, Carol reached into the box beside her and handed him a photo. That's your birth father, not who Martin said, not someone rich or powerful, just a man I tried to love and had to leave. Daniel stared at the face in the photo, frozen. It was someone he recognized, not from family stories, but from business meetings. A billionaire investor who had once tried to buy out Daniel's company and failed. A man who always seemed to know more about Daniel than he should have. A man who never stopped watching. I never told anyone, Carol whispered, because I was afraid. But now you need to know. The truth hit harder than anything else. Daniel hadn't just stumbled onto a long-lost mother. He was the son of one of the most powerful men in the industry, a rival, and someone had made sure he never knew. As the weight of it all sank in, Daniel stood, his voice calm but sharp. This isn't over. And he was right. Because the truth hadn't just changed his past, it had now put everything he'd built at risk. And someone out there still wanted it buried. Daniel left Carol's house that night with a storm of emotions tearing through him. Anger, relief, confusion, and something else he couldn't quite name. But there was also clarity. For the first time in his life, he knew who he was. Not just the young billionaire, not just the tech prodigy, but a son of a woman who had given everything to protect him, and of a man whose name carried more weight than Daniel ever realized. The days that followed weren't easy. The media caught wind of something after Martin, trying to save himself, leaked fragments of the story. Headlines exploded. Asterisk, asterisk, tech mogul's secret past, asterisk, 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 billionaire's real identity revealed, asterisk, asterisk. But Daniel didn't hide. Instead, he released a statement, one that didn't share every detail, but told enough. He acknowledged the woman who raised him with love, and he honored the woman who brought him into the world, even though life had forced her to stay silent. Carol stayed in her town, quietly returning to the diner, though she only worked weekends now. Daniel made sure she was cared for, not just with money, but with time. He visited often. They talked, sometimes for hours, trying to fill in the missing years between them. There were still questions, still regrets, but also forgiveness. Healing took time, but it started. As for Martin, his power didn't last. With Daniel's influence and the truth out in the open, the old deals he made came under investigation. One by one, the walls he'd built began to crumble. Carol didn't celebrate his fall, but she didn't look back either. The twist with Daniel's birth father took longer to unfold. The man never reached out. Not publicly, not privately. But Daniel didn't need him anymore. He understood now that blood didn't define love. The father he had never met might have shaped part of his past, but it was Carol, and the people who stood by him, that shaped his future. In the end, the love story everyone had questioned, the strange marriage between a 24-year-old billionaire and a 63-year-old waitress, wasn't what they thought at all. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a scandal. It was a reunion, a return, a way to rewrite the narrative they were never allowed to tell the first time. And maybe, just maybe, it was fate, the kind that waits quietly, patiently, until the timing is right. Because sometimes the most unbelievable stories aren't made up. They're simply the truth finally finding its way home.